pops up from the front seat in her car and drives off.
With a flat tire?
Tire wasn't flat, Joe.
And the woman jumps in my car and drives away. In my car. She drives away.
She wore the hats, she kept the diary, and she taught a generation about growing up. But the real story behind Blossom is wilder than any dream sequence involving ALF. From a secret catcher in the Rye blueprint to a catchphrase nobody wanted, the behind-the-scenes chaos would make anyone say, "Whoa!" Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Blossom. Fact 1. The whole show was inspired by a Dion concert.
Her do your homework?
She's smarter than I am.
Sheet metal is smarter than you are.
Most television shows are born in writers' rooms, but Blossom got its start at a birthday party in Florida. In 1988, series creator Don Rio, a veteran writer with credits including MASH, Rhoda, and The Golden Girls, was invited to the 50th birthday party of his longtime friend Dion DiMucci, the lead singer of the 1950s rock group Dion and the Belmonts. That group is best known for hits like Run Around Sue and The Wanderer, and DiMucci himself was already a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee by that point. What struck Rio that day was not the fame or the legacy, but the way Dion interacted with his 3 daughters. Despite being a genuine rock legend, DiMucci sat around the breakfast table like any other dad, giving calm, patient, non-judgmental advice and loving his kids unconditionally. Rio later described him as a hip-with-it musician father, the kind of parent he had never seen represented on television. At the time, most TV dads were conservative authority figures or lovable buffoons, but this was something entirely different. Rio walked away from that party convinced that a cool, real musician raising a family was exactly the kind of fresh dynamic that American sitcoms were missing. He went home and started developing a pilot built around that exact energy. The father in the original concept was not a rock star, but a pianist in the Tonight Show band, a working musician, present and involved, raising his children alone. That single afternoon, watching Dion DiMucci with his family set in motion everything that would eventually become Blossom, a show that ran for 5 seasons and averaged around 12 million viewers a week. Fact 2. The pilot had completely different parents.
Language is a little racy.
Mom, I go to public school in Los Angeles. The only words I don't hear daily are scholarship and achievement.
When most people think of Blossom, they picture Ted Wass as Nick Russo, the laid-back single musician dad raising 3 kids on his own. But in the original pilot that NBC aired on July 5, 1990, that character did not exist. Instead, Blossom had 2 married parents, played by actors Richard Masur and Barry Youngfellow, and her father was not a musician at all, but a finance worker named Terry who worked in accounting. The reason for this very different setup came down to network nerves. Don Rio had always wanted to tell the story of a cool, divorced musician dad paired with an emotionally perceptive teenage daughter. But NBC executives felt that combination was simply too unconventional to put on the air. They worried audiences would not connect with such an unusual family structure, so they pushed Rio and his producing partners to give the children a more traditional nuclear family. 2 parents under one roof, one of whom had a steady, ordinary job. Rio agreed to these changes in order to get the pilot made, but he was never happy with the result. When the pilot aired and the ratings were strong enough for NBC to order the show as a full series, Rio immediately went back to network president Brandon Tartikoff and made his case again. This time, Tartikoff agreed, telling Rio he had been right from the start. Masur and Youngfellow were let go, the family dynamic was completely overhauled, and Ted Wass was brought in to play the single musician father Rio had always envisioned. The show that actually ran for 5 seasons looked very little like the pilot that had launched it. Fact 3. Joey's character had a different name.
Watched the Home Shopping Network all day and kept buying ID bracelets for everybody.
Joey Lawrence became so identified with the name and character of Joey Russo that it is hard to imagine anyone calling that character anything else. But in the original pilot episode that aired in the summer of 1990, the character was not called Joey at all. His name in the pilot was Donnie, specifically Donnie Russo, and he was written as a slightly different version of the lovably dim jock that audiences would later come to adore. When NBC ordered Blossom as a full series following the pilot's strong ratings, the show went through significant changes, and one of them was the character's name. Joey Lawrence, who was already a recognizable young actor from his work on the sitcom Gimme a Break, pushed for the character to be renamed Joey, essentially his own first name. Producers agreed, and the decision turned out to be more significant than it might seem on the surface, because it helped blur the line between the actor and the role in a way that made both feel more authentic to audiences. There is a certain charm to the idea that one of the most recognizable characters in early 1990s television almost went through life being called Donnie. The name change was a small one, but it helped give Joey Lawrence the freedom to bring something genuinely personal to the role. Rather than inhabiting a completely separate character, he was playing a heightened, funnier version of himself, a young guy named Joey who happened to say, "whoa," a lot. The pilot's Donnie could not have done that in quite the same way. Fact 4. Blossom was a secret catcher in the Rye remake.
I meant to say yes. I opened my mouth to say yes, and no came out.
Long before Blossom Russo was talking into her video diary or dancing in the opening credits, she was conceived as part of a very literary project. Creator Don Rio has spoken openly about how J.D. Salinger's classic 1951 novel, The Catcher in the Rye, was one of the two main inspirations behind the entire series. In fact, Rio initially pitched the show to NBC in 1989 under the title Richie, a name that was meant to evoke the spirit of Holden Caulfield, the novel's famous teenage narrator. In Rio's early vision, the lead character was a teenage boy who, like Holden, was wise beyond his years, deeply introspective, and slightly at odds with the world around him. That boy eventually became Tony, the recovering addict older brother, and the Holden-like qualities were later distributed across both brothers. Once NBC pushed to make the girl the central character, Blossom herself absorbed many of those traits: the diary keeping, the philosophical monologues, the tendency to stop and examine life rather than just live it. Rio made sure the connection was not just a private inspiration. In the final episode of the entire series, Blossom sits down to record one last video diary entry, and she describes herself directly as a teenage Holden Caulfield. Rio co-wrote the finale and deliberately included that line as a tribute to where the whole idea had begun. So while millions of viewers watched what seemed like a straightforward family sitcom about a girl with big hats and big feelings, they were actually watching a 5-year adaptation of one of the most celebrated American novels ever written. Fact 5. Natasha Lyonne almost played Six.
Works fine for you. You live with your mother.
What?
I just wish my mom lived here sometimes.
The role of Six Lemure, Blossom's fast-talking, high-energy best friend, eventually went to Jenna Von Oy, who made the character completely her own. But before Von Oy landed the part, a number of other young actresses went through the audition process, and one of them was a girl who would go on to become a major television star in her own right, Natasha Lyonne. At the time of the Blossom auditions, Lyonne was a young actress who had already appeared in a few productions, but was still years away from her breakout roles. She would later become widely known to a new generation of viewers through her work in Orange is the New Black, where she played Nikki Nichols for years, and more recently in the critically praised series Russian Doll. But in 1990, she was simply a New York kid with a sharp, fast energy that made her a natural candidate for the role of Six. Whether she came close to winning the part or was simply one of many hopefuls who auditioned depends on the source, but what is confirmed is that she was in the mix. Creator Don Rio has said that Von Oy was essentially irreplaceable once he saw her read for the role, and that he had no intention of letting her go regardless of other opportunities she had. Still, the idea of Natasha Lyonne as Six Lemure in a 1990 NBC sitcom is one of those genuinely fascinating casting roads not taken. Both actresses went on to do remarkable things, but only one of them got to be Blossom's best friend. Fact 6. Melissa Joan Hart also passed on the role.
It's terrific. That guy Reggie turned out to be an incredible musician. Absolutely inspired.
Natasha Lyonne was not the only future television icon who came close to playing Six. Around the same time the Blossom pilot was being developed, a young actress named Melissa Joan Hart was offered the role, and she turned it down. Instead, Hart took the lead in a competing project, Nickelodeon's Clarissa Explains It All, in which she played the title character Clarissa Darling starting in 1991. She would go on to star in that show for 4 seasons before becoming even more famous as the title character in Sabrina the Teenage Witch. The timing here is remarkable. Blossom and Clarissa. Explains It All launched at almost exactly the same moment, and both shows were pioneering in the same way. Each put a sharp, self-aware, unusually honest teenage girl at the center of the story in an era when that was not common on American television. Hart chose the show where she would be the lead, which makes complete professional sense, and it worked out well for everyone involved. What is particularly interesting is that both shows and their respective lead characters are now remembered as defining portraits of what it meant to be a young woman in the early 1990s. Had Hart taken the role of Six on Blossom, she would have been a supporting character rather than the lead, and Clarissa Darling, as Hart herself played her, might never have existed. The decision Melissa Joan Hart made in 1990 inadvertently shaped 2 of the era's most beloved female characters at the same time. Fact 7. The whoa nobody wanted.
Or Blossom? Could you tell her that I miss her?
Nobody. It is hard to overstate how much Joey Lawrence's catchphrase defined the cultural moment of Blossom. For a stretch of the early 1990s, "Whoa" was one of the most recognized phrases in American pop culture, instantly associated with Lawrence and his dopey, lovable character, Joey Russo. But the story of how that catchphrase came to exist is a lot less polished than the legend. The word "whoa" was originally written into the script as a nod to Keanu Reeves and the slacker surfer characters that Reeves had recently made famous in the Bill and Ted films. The intention was for Joey to deliver the line in a drawn-out California surfer dude style, a timely pop culture reference that producers hoped would get a laugh from the studio audience. It did not. The line fell flat, the audience was quiet, and the executive producer came to Lawrence directly and told him it was not working, asking him to try something different. Lawrence later recalled the moment with genuine puzzlement. He did not plan what he did next. He simply tried the line again in a completely different way, shorter, more surprised, more fully committed, and the audience laughed loudly and for a long time. They did a second take, and the reaction was the same. From that single unexpected moment, one of the most recognizable catchphrases of the decade was born. Lawrence has said many times that he still has no idea where the delivery came from, and that the word continues to follow him everywhere, including, on one occasion, from a pastor greeting him after an Easter church service. Fact 8. Six's name had a disturbing origin.
Idiot talking about?
Dad called. He spent the night at Elaine's.
He slept there?
I seriously doubt that.
One of the most memorable and enduring running jokes of the entire series is the question of how Six Lemure got her unusual name. In the show's regular run, the explanation is kept relatively light. Her name is connected to birth order or is just treated as an eccentric family quirk. But in the original pilot episode that aired on July 5, 1990, the answer was something very different and considerably more adult. In the pilot, when Blossom asks Six about her strange name, Six replies that her father named her that because that is how many beers it took, meaning that is how many beers her parents had each consumed on the night she was conceived. The line is remarkably blunt for a network sitcom airing in primetime in 1990, let alone one that was clearly aimed at a family and teenage audience. Somehow it made it past the censors and onto the air. When the show was picked up as a full series and the pilot was revised with a new cast and new family setup, the line was softened considerably. The birth order explanation became the more commonly remembered version, and many viewers who watched the regular series never knew the original joke existed at all. Looking back, the fact that such a line aired on NBC in the summer of 1990 on what was essentially a family-friendly show is a genuinely surprising piece of broadcast history. It is the kind of joke that reads as edgy even by today's standards, let alone by the standards of early 1990s network television. Fact 9. The pilot aired on the same day as Seinfeld's pilot.
That is my wish. So? Okay, this is very important. I don't want you to trick me again.
The summer of 1990 was an unusual moment for NBC. The network had a habit of airing pilot episodes as one-off summer specials to test audience interest before committing to a full series order. And on July 5th, 1990, they did exactly that with Blossom. The pilot aired as a standalone special and pulled in strong enough ratings for NBC to order the show as a mid-season replacement. What makes that date particularly remarkable is that it was exactly 1 year, to the day, after NBC had done the same thing with another pilot that would go on to reshape American television. On July 5, 1989, NBC had aired the pilot episode of Seinfeld under the same conditions. A one-off summer special, tested quietly, with the network watching to see if the audience responded. The Blossom pilot, when it aired a year later, actually ranked number 3 in the national Nielsen ratings for the week. Just one spot below it, at number 4, was a repeat of the Seinfeld pilot. So on the same evening, the Blossom pilot was beating a repeat of the Seinfeld pilot in the ratings, 1 year after those two pilots had effectively launched on the same calendar date. Both shows would go on to become signature parts of NBC's early 1990s Monday night lineup, airing in the same block alongside The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. The symmetry of those July 5th dates is one of those coincidences that feels too neat to be true, but is entirely documented. Fact 10. Mayim Bialik personally assembled the cast.
Did you hire a guy to do it?
Blossom, I am a guy.
On most television productions, casting is the domain of directors, producers, and professional casting agents. The actors show up, audition, and wait to hear back. But on Blossom, the lead actress had a surprisingly direct hand in shaping who she would be working with, and her instincts turned out to be exactly right. Before the pilot was even filmed, Mayim Bialik was responsible for getting Michael Stoyanov cast as her older brother Tony. She had seen Stoyanov in a guest role on the sitcom Empty Nest, a sister series under the same production company, and immediately felt he would be perfect. She thought they shared a strong physical resemblance, particularly what she described as prominent Russian facial features, and that audiences would genuinely believe they were siblings. She brought him to the attention of the production team, and he got the role. When the pilot was later recast and a new father figure was needed, Bialik again stepped in. She had enjoyed her audition with actor Ted Wass more than any other, and she made her preference known. Wass was actually considering leaving acting at that point to focus on directing, but he was persuaded to take the role on the condition that he could also direct multiple episodes throughout the series. He went on to direct many of them. The fact that two of Blossom's most important relationships on screen, with her father and her oldest brother, were essentially cast because a 15-year-old actress pushed for the right people speaks to just how unusually perceptive and involved Bialik was from the very beginning. Fact 11. The actress playing the youngest was actually older.
It's a store shaped like a cowboy hat, and Mom let us walk bow-legged and talk with accents, and Mom's saying, "Oh, sorry, Dad."
There is a certain irony built into the core premise of Blossom that most viewers never thought about while watching the show. Blossom Russo is the youngest child and only daughter in the Russo family, a fact established from the very first episode and reinforced throughout the series. Joey and Tony are her older brothers, and the whole dynamic of the show is built partly around Blossom navigating a household of older male figures. But the actress playing the youngest family member was actually older than the actor playing one of her older brothers. Mayim Bialik was born on December 12, 1975. Joey Lawrence was born on April 20, 1976, making Bialik 4 months older than the actor who played her older brother Joey for the entire 5-season run of the show. The age gap is small, but the reversal is complete. Every time Joey called Blossom his little sister, he was being called that by someone who had technically been alive longer than he had. The gap between Bialik and Jenna Von Oy, who played Six, Blossom's same-age best friend, is even wider. Von Oy was born in 1977, making her 2 full years younger than Bialik. So while the two characters were written as being essentially the same age and in the same grade at school, the actresses portraying them were born 2 years apart. None of this affected the performances or the chemistry, which felt entirely natural throughout the show's run. But it is one of those background facts that quietly rewires how you picture the cast. Fact 12. Bill Bixby directed from his deathbed.
Who else would I ask? I've always loved you, Blossom.
Blossom?
Most people who remember Bill Bixby know him as an actor, specifically as the lead in The Incredible Hulk, the beloved 1970s and early 80s television series in which he played David Banner, the mild-mannered scientist who transformed into a green giant when provoked. What many do not know is that Bixby spent the final years of his life as a prolific television director, and that some of his last and most significant directing work happened on the set of Blossom. Bixby began directing episodes of the show in its 3rd season in 1992, 1 year after he had been privately diagnosed with prostate cancer. He did not publicly disclose his illness and continued working throughout his treatment. He directed 30 episodes of Blossom across seasons 3 and 4, and the cast and crew have described him as deeply professional and beloved on set. Mayim Bialik later recalled that the entire season was emotionally charged for everyone involved, even those who did not fully understand what Bixby was going through at the time. In November of 1993, the situation became impossible to conceal. Shortly after learning that his cancer had become terminal, Bixby collapsed on the Blossom set while actively directing an episode. He was hospitalized immediately. He died 6 days later, on November 21, 1993, at the age of 59. The tragedy hit the cast deeply. Adding to the grief of that period, Ted Wass, who played Blossom's father, Nick Russo, lost his wife to ovarian cancer just 5 weeks after Bixby's death. By the time the 3rd season wrapped, the Blossom set had become a place of profound and unexpected loss. Fact 13. A writer quit mid-series for Conan O'Brien.
You haven't forgotten about taking me for my driving test on Friday, have you?
No, but I did forget that you own a Corvette.
Michael Stoyanov played Tony Russo for almost the entire run of Blossom, the oldest of the 3 Russo siblings, a recovering addict who was working to rebuild his life and eventually became a paramedic. It was a genuinely complex role for a sitcom, and Stoyanov brought a lot of depth to it across 4 seasons. But when the show's 5th and final season arrived, Tony Russo was written out of the series before the end, and the reason had nothing to do with the story. Stoyanov had been offered a writing job on Late Night with Conan O'Brien, which was then filming at 30 Rockefeller Plaza in New York. He accepted the offer and asked producers to write his character off the show so he could leave. They did, sending Tony away in an episode called The Departure. And so one of the show's most important characters vanished from the final season before it was over, not because the story called for it, but because the actor had decided to change careers. The job at Late Night turned out to be a genuinely great experience. Stoyanov worked alongside future comedy giants including Louis C.K., Robert Smigel, and Stephen Colbert during their early careers. But leaving Blossom before it ended was something he came to regret. He told People magazine in 2000 that he had not fully appreciated the position he was in during the show's run, and that he had learned not to take things for granted. He left late night within a year, went on to write briefly for Mad TV and Mr. Show with Bob and David, and eventually returned to acting, a reminder that the grass is not always greener, even when it comes with a desk at 30 Rock. Fact 14. Blossom's dream sequences featured Hugh Hefner and God.
I understand.
I hope you're not too disappointed. Maybe you can go with someone else.
No, I don't want to go with someone else.
One of the most distinctive creative choices in Blossom was the regular use of fantasy sequences in which the main character would drift into an elaborate daydream and receive advice or commentary from a celebrity guest. These sequences had a surreal, almost anything goes quality that set the show apart from most family sitcoms of the era, and the guest list across the series' 5 seasons reads like a genuinely strange document of early 1990s popular culture. The roster included Mr. T, ALF the alien puppet from the sitcom of the same name, Will Smith, then at the peak of his Fresh Prince of Bel-Air fame, David Spade, Felicia Rashad, Hugh Hefner, and Sonny Bono, among many others. Music legends like B.B. King also appeared. The show also made use of classic television figures like John Ratzenberger from Cheers and Mary Hart from Entertainment Tonight, blending current celebrities with nostalgic ones in a way that gave the dream sequences an intentionally dreamlike mix of the familiar and the unexpected. But the most remarkable casting choice across all of these fantasy segments was arguably God. In multiple episodes, the Almighty appeared as a character played by comedian Don Novello, best known as Father Guido Sarducci, his recurring character from Saturday Night Live. Having God himself show up to offer wisdom to a teenage girl in suburban Los Angeles was exactly the kind of absurdist choice that made Blossom feel unlike anything else on the network schedule at the time, and Novello played it with the same dry, unhurried delivery he brought to his Saturday Night Live character. Fact 15. The show was originally about the brother.
I go for a ride right now and we'll take care of some of this stuff together. And while we're at it, you can practice parallel parking.
Dad.
Here is perhaps the most fundamental fact about Blossom that most of its fans have never known. The show was never supposed to be about Blossom. When creator Don Rio first developed the project and pitched it to NBC in 1989, he was pitching a show about a teenage boy. The working title was Richie, and the central character was a wise beyond his years, introspective young man modeled closely after Holden Caulfield. Blossom was in that original script, but as the younger sister, a supporting character in someone else's story. When NBC received the pitch, they liked a great deal of it, but one executive, described in various accounts as a female executive at the network, pushed back on the lead character. She pointed out that the qualities Rio had given his teenage protagonist, the emotional intelligence, the self-reflection, the diary-keeping inner life, felt much more natural and believable coming from a teenage girl than from a teenage boy. She suggested that Rio flip the lead, making the sister the central character and distributing the Holden Caulfield-like qualities between her and her brothers. Rio accepted the note and made the change, and it completely transformed the show he was making. What could have been another coming-of-age story about a teenage boy became something far less common on American television at the time. A show genuinely built around the interiority of a teenage girl, told on her terms, from her perspective. The broader sitcom landscape at the time was not especially friendly to that idea, which makes the note from that NBC executive and Rio's willingness to follow it one of the most consequential creative decisions in the show's history.